So I signed up for this girls volleyball camp and started playing. I was the only guy there, and
Genius.
Yeah, at the time I don't think I realized that. And I fell in love with playing. We petitioned in the school board and actually started boys volleyball at Chico High. That was kind of the first time that I found volleyball and leadership kind of converging in the same spot.
And UCI has won 4 national championships. And I think you coined this phrase, cultivating champions to win championships. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, that came from you.
Welcome to another episode of You Go First. I'm your host, Lain Hensley, and I'm very excited to have in studio Mr. David Kniffin. Welcome, Kniff. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so who's this Kniff guy? Let me tell you a little about our guest this morning. I met David when he was just a sophomore in high school. He grew up here in Chico, California. And he was just one of those standout high school kids that in our work in leadership and in public schools and trying to inspire greater leaders in the next generation, he rose to the top of his group and found himself working at Odyssey. And we sort of stayed in touch over the years. You went on to play college volleyball and ended up playing volleyball in Europe as a pro. You were, I believe, setter of the year in the college spectrum, and just a big part of the UC Irvine Anteaters program down there. And went on to then, UC Irvine is 4-time national champions. In September, I believe in 2012, you took over the program as the head coach and went on to win a national championship in that first year as head coach. So why would we have a volleyball coach on You Go First when we're talking about leadership and life and business and all that stuff? And for me, it's just a no-brainer because I love volleyball. I coach volleyball, and volleyball to me is just a reflection of life and the chaos of it, trying to produce some order in that. And when you're going for the big kill, you have people supporting you, people covering what you're trying to create. And so in Odyssey and in our work out there in leadership and in teams, it's all about pushing people to work better in teams. And that's certainly what happens on the court, on and off the court, because it's a long season. I think it's a 9-month season, plus you're with these guys at the NCAA D1 level. It's pretty much a year-round occupation. So let's talk about, let's just start with where you started as far as just a young kid in Chico, California, dreaming of playing professional volleyball and dreaming of maybe coaching a team at the very top level in the world. What seeds did you have in your mind back then? What were inspirations you had back then that you still pull from today as you, and I want to not use the word coach, but really lead these young men, these 16 to 20 young men through college and through trying to perform at the highest level of their sport?
Yeah, my dreams didn't go that far when I was in high school. I was dreaming kind of next step, and I think the first thing I discovered volleyball, I believe in 8th grade. It was a book report that we were actually, it was a report about ourselves, and we had to go interview an expert in the field. So I interviewed Jim Brenton, who was the head coach at Chico State at the time, and he said, if you're interested in this kind of thing, why don't you come to my camp? So I signed up for this girls volleyball camp and started playing. I was the only guy there, and
Genius.
Yeah, at the time I don't think I realized that, and I got there, but I fell in love with playing, and I really just wanted to keep playing. And so in order to play, there were some hurdles, and to get over those hurdles required, some of those same kind of strategies or tactics you do use with any challenge. One was that we didn't have a high school team at the time. So I think one of the first times I really found myself in a position of leadership on this kind of quest of playing more was, and with huge support from my parents, we petitioned the school board and actually started boys volleyball at Chico High after my sophomore year in high school. And they let us start a self-funded program. So that was kind of the first time that I found volleyball and leadership kind of converging in the same spot.
Well, I happen to know the person who I believe was the head coach in those early years, Rob Can, a good friend of ours still to this day, and what a great guy. His daughter actually just got pulled up to varsity. So there's always like this, it's so weird how life works. And I think as listeners out there, I think there's just a reality that look around your life right now, everybody. And there's probably relationships that are going to be significant in the years ahead. And you might not realize the value of those relationships. When we first connected, I worked with Rob at Sports LTD when I was a college student, and all these points of light continue to connect for me. And as you search the planet really for these volleyball players and then connect them as a group, you spend a couple of weeks at the beginning of the season helping them really understand the culture that you're trying to create as a leader. And I think culture is so important to leaders out there and to people when they really buy into a culture. So tell us a little bit about how now that you've gone through those pathways, you've started a program in high school, end up playing at the top level, end up playing pro, and then find yourself as a head coach of a national championship team. And UCI has won 4 national championships. So you're part of really excellence and really a championship program. What are your philosophies around how to create a culture that will sustain the kind of performance that you expect from your team?
Yeah, that's what we're curious about every year. I think one of the things we do that's been so special and with huge influence from you and others in the community, we've been able to kind of isolate ourselves away a little bit. We've been able to get some quiet time and space with this team and really kind of just feel out what is important. What are some of those qualities on the team that we already know? I mean, most of the time we know what a good teammate looks like. If we really search our heart of hearts, we know what a good teammate looks like. If we're talking about a garden, we know what a weed looks like. We know what the good qualities are. We know what the bad qualities are. And we really want to overshadow those bad qualities or those character traits in a teammate that maybe we wouldn't want at the forefront. So one of the ways we do that, and it's in all of us, the things that our guys are identifying this week. I think something that's been kind of an epiphany moment for me is we're talking about some of these values of, trust and trust leading to vulnerability and the importance of that. We're talking about gratitude. We're talking about attention to detail. And we're just talking about the love that you can have with the teammate and how different your relationship with someone in the workplace is, whether that's a job, you're spending 8 hours a day with them, or as a teammate on the court with them and kind of seeing them at their best, but also seeing them at their worst. Mm-hmm. And that's a really special relationship. And to hear our guys talk about those qualities, the moment for me that was really the epiphany moment was these things exist in all our relationships already. And really we're talking about to what level, what is the quality of those things? You and I have trust that we've built over years. You and I both have gratitude for each other. Mm-hmm. We have that for our spouses. We have that for other people in our lives. What we're curious about is how deep do we want to go with that stuff? So what we do here is we set them apart for 2 weeks from their technology. We put them in an environment that's different where maybe they can't hang on to the things that they felt comfortable with before. And then what we find is they start hanging on to each other. And as long as we're giving them some structure to grow on, that grows them in the direction we desire, we insert a little bit of Lain Hensley and Odyssey, and we help them understand the vision and what it could look like to chase this, and give them some tools and some strategies and some activities to help them kind of understand themselves. This, I think, for me is the fundamental part of kind of building what are you capable of. The going back part, I find myself saying often to them, okay, now you've shown me what you're capable of. This becomes the new expectation. Mm-hmm. And that's whether that's a skill or something they did great. And we're really trying to highlight those things. So it's less about, okay, here's some areas you need to work. And, gosh, we're not very good at this yet. It's a lot more about, wow, look at that threshold we just got to. Okay, that becomes your new minimum there. And then through that, we find and we hope that the other minimums or the areas we want to get better kind of just trail along with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not unlike a salesperson. They achieve a certain number and then the manager's like, congratulations, you hit your stretch goal. That's now your standard. Yep. And now you have to exceed that. And I think, you guys obviously know some of the opponents that you're going to face. Their defensive strategies. And I think companies are the same way. They understand their competition. And how do you put yourself, like you said, in isolation and really work to develop your very best, aside from just getting good enough to beat your opponent, but becoming, and I think you coined this phrase, cultivating champions to win championships. Mm-hmm. And I love the word cultivating because we talk a lot about farming and, when you plant a seed and this goal of cultivating something that, will come in the distant future. Where did that cultivating champions to win championships? Because I think in leadership, whether you're leading your company or your family or school, really that vision of, okay, what am I cultivating? How do I cultivate champions in my home? How do I cultivate champions in my family? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, that came from you. I mean, really, I think back and I look at my journey, through this, and one of the, I guess the way it was really said most recently was one of the first times we worked with our team back in the fall of 2014 before we went on to that was the year in 2015 we won the regular season and the conference tournament, which is very difficult to do in our league because the national champion had really, to that point, had come from our league, I think all but just a couple years in the history of the league. So, it was tough. We ended up going to the national semifinals that year, losing in the semifinals, but certainly a relevant team for the national championship quest. And, one of the things you said to us was, look, there's the law of the farm and there's the law of the school. And in school, I think we get in this habit of we can cram for this. The law of the farm is, the farmer can't cram for the harvest. You got to plant the seed. You got to protect it from, whatever predators are out there. You got to take care of the weeds, make sure there's out there. You got to give it nutrients and nourishment. The weather has to play a factor. There's some chance involved. There's all these variables in play. It's a much longer process, but the harvest is worth it. And that would be true in our relationships as well with these guys. Something that Johnny said, one of the guys on our team this year, we're doing book reports with the guys. They had a summer read and then they present to the team. And what I tell them is I go, this isn't really a report on the book, because really the guys aren't that interested in the book itself. This is a report on our team. So when you do this book report, that's how I want you to frame it. You're going to read this book as an opportunity to gain illustrations for our team, to talk about our team. And Johnny read a book called The Advantage. And one of the comments in there is that companies can no longer rely, teams for us can no longer rely on information or knowledge trading hands, because it just happens too quickly. So keeping something secret, a training method or how a team practices, there's scouting reports out there now.
Yeah, right.
I would imagine in business it would be the same way. If your company's developing something, somebody else is going to figure out how to develop it and maybe do it better than you. So what then is the competitive differentiator? And it has to be culture. It has to be a healthy team culture. So that's what we're really focused on here.
Yeah. For those listeners out there that aren't really savvy to volleyball, so in volleyball, you get the most 3 contacts, and there's kind of primary defenders, and then there's the setter, and then there's the attackers. Ideally, they're attacking when we have a chance to score, and they're defending by blocking and making different moves when it's time to defend the attacking team. And to me, there's so many metaphors in what it takes as far as, the libero, who's really this primary defender, who, if they're doing their job really well, they're almost unnoticed on the court. And that's, your accounts receivable. That's your general manager. That's your person that's just making everything work smoothly. And the setter is just setting up those salespeople or setting up those leaders to succeed. And like I said, the covering, but you've got 6 players on the court. They have all these finite rules about how many subs, but you've got 17 or 18 people on the roster that are traveling or that are over on the bench. And I think that's a common challenge for, every company out there that, how do you keep everybody engaged, knowing that they have to have a role? All those roles are so important. And some roles are on the court, getting the highlight reels, getting the accolades, getting the player of the year and all that stuff. And, tell us a bit about just what, like you said, culture is a part of it. And of course, here, as you start this campaign this season, it's always a looming question of how will the guys and the team come together to create a culture that really values every person. Any insights in how you do that? I mean, I think everybody who leads a team is wondering, how do I keep everybody involved? And in volleyball, you eventually write down their number and they step on the court, and the others can be like demoralized, or they can be motivated that they're a part of a program that's championship level.
Right. I think one of the things that was really dramatic for me in terms of a shift and kind of helped me understand how I want to lead this program is, and I think some of it changed with kids and family, and we look at the hours in the day and what are we doing with those, and I think something for me is, in our volleyball season, and I love that volleyball gets to be the example here, because it's such a crowded team sport. For those that don't know it, it's a 900 square foot.
It's the most players in the smallest space of any sport. And it's so random and it's so fast.
Yes. And it does require, you cannot just take the ball and run for a touchdown. You cannot, just say, okay, everybody clear to this side, I'm going to go dunk it. It requires multiple contacts by multiple people, and the systems and where you're allowed to stand and where you're not. Everybody has to kind of move around. And so there is this very cool opportunity of it. It's the consummate team sport. And I do love that about it. But in terms of, your question, I think for us, we look at the season and we go, gosh, there's one day the national championship is going to be held out of a 365-day year. And there's 30 days where matches will be played. If we do everything right and go through the playoffs, it's about 30 matches in a season for us. And then if you back it up even more, there's 280 days in an academic year. And we're only going to train for, 100 of those days because we have our own limitations and rules. But we're going to live together kind of in this quest for an entire calendar year. This never stops. And so the majority of our life, where we're living life, where we're finding value cannot be from those singular small moments. And so we're looking at where are we living in all those moments throughout the year. And that's where, the difference for us is, how are you feeling about your teammates? Are you putting in time and space with them? Like we have concentrated time and space here. But are you taking the time to go, barbecue with your teammate? Are you making an effort on a daily basis in little moments to say thank you to our strength coach? Are you looking guys in the eye and telling them, hey, I'm grateful you're here? Because we have all this opportunity to play, compete. And what we've found is that our greatest combatant to feeling entitled, our greatest combatant to feeling frustrated with our position on the team or that we're not playing is just to look around and open our eyes and just lead with gratitude. And that's been really special. But I think that's how we start to orient towards kind of living in that space. So when those championship moments come, we can be fully present for our teammates. And we can, without hanging on anything for ourselves, be really grateful and glad that that person to the right or the left is having success because we've practiced being grateful that person is in our life for all those moments that weren't the starting lineup moment or weren't the national championship moment.
Yeah. You really touched on it when you were talking about the time you guys were in the semifinals, following a national championship and then just finding yourself and not getting to the final match, not winning again. And I think, there's times we measure results, how did this moment go? And there's times when it has to be about process. It has to be about relationships. And if all of the teams, how many teams are competing for the national championship? How many teams are in that conversation?
Yeah,
total from the very bottom team to the top.
Yeah, maybe 30.
So you have 30 teams, each of them carrying 15 to 20 people on their roster. So, you've got 500 people out there, coaches and all striving for something that this small percentage are going to truly achieve. It can't be that only those 20 plus coaches get to actually celebrate the year. It has to be about something bigger than that. And that, I think, as leaders is a really challenging thing. But like you touched on, it's not just that 3-hour match that defines who we are. It's about the relationships. It's about the culture. It's about the company. It's about the people, our families. And, as we look at, as I look at my own career and getting to kind of walk this volleyball career with you, I mean, you're a young guy, you got lots of years of coaching, but what's kind of legacy stuff? When you think of guys that played for you 4 or 5 or 8 years ago, what do you want them to say about Kniff as a coach? What are you trying to, really represent? Like I always say, people might never read your book, but they read it by interacting with you, that you are your book. What would your book say? What do you want them to remember about your coaching?
Just hopefully that it was intentional. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me when I look at these guys is I'm doing my best, and it's we said yesterday actually in practice, one of the most beautiful things here is that we're imperfect people playing an imperfect game. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a rough cocktail. But you know what? Everybody else is doing that too. And I think that's really liberating. We look around and it's like, gosh, okay, so the team we're going to play against also is faced daily with, when we talk about competition, there are going to be results out there we're going to want to focus on. Every team is playing an imperfect game with imperfect people. And there are going to be moments every single day that move towards fracturing a team or move towards bringing a team together. And we want to be as intentional as possible about finding those moments, identifying them, being aware of them, cultivating that awareness, and then choosing to move in a direction that's healing instead of hurting. It's the classic, you're either adding to or you're taking away. Yeah. There's really not, if it exists, it's very minimal neutral space at all. And so my hope is that as we go through and guys look back, they go, well, better coaches out there, but Kniff did his best for us, and he was certainly intentional with what he was trying to do, and where he was trying to take us was good.
I think one of your players, your players have a favorite quote. One of your players, I think Reed, had all in or in the way. And that mantra of are we all in for each other? Are we all in for our goal? And not just the goal of a national championship, but the goal of the culture we want to create, that cultivating champions and really getting people all in around the culture of your company or your community or your school or whatever is a very challenging thing, and really clarifying what is that goal and why is it important to you. And I think you're a bit unique in coaching, but leading your team in that quest to be a champion in who you are as a person. And I know that if you look back at the last 8 years and maybe beyond of people coming out of the UCI program, they're leading companies, they're successful in their personal lives. And I think that's obviously, for me at least, the highest level of success is not just 4 national championships, but that you're pushing out really, really quality people that understand what it takes to operate at a really high level, whether that's leading, like I said, any place in your life. What do you think are biggest challenges that you see on the forefront? And maybe some of your players will listen to this at some point. So, it's always just, as you look at the landscape of the future for this next season, what are the biggest challenges you think you'll be facing as you're leading them through, like you say, that imperfect and really chaotic work environment, if you will?
Yeah. I remember a great scene, Remember the Titans. It's just the classic team movie, and they go up to this training camp and they have this transformative experience where this team really starts to come together. And then they get back and the insulation of training camp is gone. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they're hit with the realities of real life. And it's tough. You're talking about cultivating. I think the challenges for us is we work so hard as managers, leaders, coaches, even people within our organizations. Our guys are working hard on planting good seeds and letting these seeds take root. And if you run with that analogy, then I would say we're about to transplant, these little saplings out into an environment that maybe they're not ready for yet. And so the fear is that, we look out your window and we're beautiful Chico and, awesome office. And we look around and there's these established huge trees that can withstand so much. Mm-hmm. And then we look at these guys that are not, they're still developing. They're 18 to 22 years old. Yeah. But that could be true for you and I too, as we're cultivating new skills in ourselves or new awareness. And then we go out and we're faced with this storm that we're going to be in, and it could blow us right off course. It could knock us over, and those roots are gone. So I know that's abstract, but that is the challenge for us. Without identifying one specific thing to volleyball, I would say the most useful thing for anyone listening to this is there's something you're working on right now that you're trying to become better at. There's something that you're excited about, or you've identified as I've got a possibility to grow in this area, and that should be super exciting. And the terrifying thing for a manager or a leader or someone around you, even with our own kids as we watch them learn, is that if you put that skill out there in the storm too early and you get discouraged because you get knocked over, you may abandon it. And we don't want you to do that. We want you to be able to get back up, throw those roots back down again and keep trying. Yeah. And then at some point, if it's valuable to you, it will take root and you'll be able to withstand. But that's our fear and our challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think beautiful teammates pick each other up in those moments. Great coaches and great teammates and great leaders.
That's right.
See in people what they don't see in themselves at the time. I think about my life and people who saw things in me that I didn't see at the time, and really believing beyond the current evidence. I think there's a quote that says, to do the impossible, you have to see the invisible.
That's right.
And, if the premier skill is seeing the future as a leader, as a volleyball player, as a coach, how far in the future can you see based on the landscape and the data that's available? And, I hope people are inspired this morning and today to listen to you and hear, as a coach and as a leader, you're in this really unique, chaotic environment. Like you say, you can't just slow down the ball like in basketball, just dribble up a little slower and we'll set up a play. It happens, the contact points on the ball have to be fast. You can't lift the ball. You can't carry the ball. So it's all happening in real time, really fast. I think it's a beautiful connection to just life right now with our cell phones and our email, and it's 24/7. There's just no stopping point, except for when you go back to serve. It's a closed skill. It's like your world. And can I go to my Zen back here? And people have those rare moments where they're totally in control of how they're responding to the crowd or to the pressure of the environments that they're in. And, I think it becomes more and more important that people catch those moments and really, we call it a closed skill in volleyball, and where they have a closed skill moment where, hey, I'm in control right now about how I respond to this and what I begin as they start a point.
And that's And even that is 8 seconds. Even then, there is a time limit on how long you can stand back there. Right. But I think this is incredibly valuable point, right? Because sometimes I think we look at these things, and as a coach, I'm like, wow, I could use a week to just think about this. I don't have a week, but I have 8 seconds to think about my next action. I have 3 seconds before I open my mouth and say something. I have time to take a deep breath before I just viscerally respond or reflexively respond to something. And as a coach or a manager or a leader, it's something that I see our best leaders on the team doing is before they jump in and try to fix or correct, they pause. Mm-hmm. And there's just that moment of pause, especially as we're learning skills, can be so valuable.
Yeah. There's such a beautiful flow too. Of course, I love volleyball. I think it's this beautiful dance when it's happening really beautifully when they're all together. But you get immediate feedback, and I think people shy away from feedback. And I think great athletes, and certainly in the volleyball game, they get comfortable getting feedback. As soon as you contact the ball, it tells you, "Hey, was my angle correct?" Because there it goes. It's pretty undeniable. It went in the bleachers, or it went to perfectly where you want it, and you can't deny that. It's like, yep, that's where it went. I hit it there because it bounced off of me. And I think in an office, in a community, people are bouncing off each other, and sometimes we deny the reality of how we influenced that ball, how we influenced that relationship. And there's a real level of accountability to the measurable of where did it go. And I think you could ask people, where did your relationship go, and how did you influence that trajectory after it contacted you? And how did the people around you respond to it? There's moments where the setter is going to decide who they set, and all 4 or 5 of your hitters, everybody else has to be ready to attack. Mm-hmm. But only one person's going to get that set, and they not being surprised when it's your big moment. And I think that so many correlations between if you're a listener out there, are you ready for your big moment all the time? So when it does come your way, bam, you take advantage. Somebody said, everybody gets their big break, but not everybody recognizes it or has the courage to take it. And there's so much recognition and courage that goes into leading and goes into trying to push yourself to a national championship. And let's flip the switch now as a young guy who's married and has kids. And how do you handle that work-life blend? I like to call it, instead of balance, because it's certainly not equal. But how do you handle that work-life blend? What are your keys to a high quality of survival in the midst of total commitment to your role?
You marry someone that's got values that work. I mean, it's for me, it's so much about surrendering to the reality, surrendering to the truth of just kind of what we're living in. And for us, I think my wife and I find peace in just, our faith is a big part of it for us. Knowing that those values are good, knowing that those values are going to work for people around us. And it really is, you talk about teamwork, and the grind of a day to day, and it's easy to look at something like marriage or raising kids as this is a grind. And, to have someone around you that reminds you to kind of look around and be grateful. That's huge. Mm-hmm. That's the best teammate you could have, when someone's there to support you. And, you've got that as well. And you've got some awesome kids and an awesome wife. And I know we spend time talking about, wow, this is great. Like this.
Yeah, you got to have it.
And so I think that's, for me, and the team really is integrated into, we made some choices. We live on campus, and the guys are over all the time. And, we try to blend them in, because that's how we want it to be. If we're going to do this, if we're going to invest this much time and energy into our work, we want it to mirror family. We want it to kind of share those same values of that love and that pursuit.
Well, I know this last year you've had some particular challenges. I know that one of your players came down. He's a 19-year-old young guy, comes down with cancer. And I know he's been, you've been a big part of really his treatment plan and living at your home. And so much so as days after he was in the hospital and having his surgeries, to really, you guys just took him into your family. And I know that, you have 2 daughters, and one of them has a kind of rare condition. I'm not.
It's a rare genetic disease. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you guys are just like, I see so much love pouring out of you on your family. And then I think that's another piece to the culture that you create at UC Irvine Volleyball, which is, that this is a family. And yes, we express ourselves through the game of volleyball, but we are rooted in the community of family and culture and support. And at the same time, not just security. You're not like, it's about, we have this, but we're striving for something that, very few people will get to accomplish. And I think that's hard as a leader, to create a safe community where people feel loved and cared for. And at the same time, you can say, get out there and work your hardest for something that very few people will actually achieve.
Sure. We have an amazing athletic director right now whose values, I think, she appreciates what we're doing. And at the end of the day, though, my job is still measured by wins and losses to the majority of the world. As people look at us, and that would be the same as a quarterly earnings report, or that's our win-loss record. And so with all these things that we're doing, all these things I believe in, I will do things this way because I believe in it. And if we don't get the wins, there is no security.
Yeah. Well, you've landed the point as far as it's an endless challenge for all leaders and people to invest yourselves deeply into a culture, into creating a kind of community. And at the same time, there's a measurable that, the outside world is looking at and going, hey, congratulations, you're a real nice person, but you didn't hit the number. Mm-hmm. What now? I just want to say a huge thank you for you coming in and sharing your insights. I hope you've made people at least a little curious to watch a volleyball game with a new level of appreciation for how quick and chaotic it can be. And there's just a real parallel to how quick and chaotic our lives can be. And as we try to lead ourselves and our teams in a grounded way in the midst of that chaos, I know you're trying to do that. I've been just overjoyed to try to support you in doing that, to get to know the guys and these young men that you're cultivating through your program. So with that, just a huge thank you to Mr. David Kniffin, Coach David Kniffin, and all of the UC Irvine Anteaters for their efforts on and off the court to make the world a better place and make the volleyball community really wake up to what is it really about. And it has to be about people.
Yeah. Well, your comment, Lain, is you're coaching your own high school team and watching you, and I'm still learning from you. If we're doing this right, we're making better people, better teammates, better volleyball players too, but that order.
Yep. All right. Well, a big thank you. And thank you to all the listeners out there that dove in today. And you go first. And I know you go first for your players. I know I go first for my players and my team and my company and with our clients. And it's just a privilege to watch you going first. I'm so proud of you. This little young high school kid that has grown up now and gone first on the biggest stage in your sport. And I wish you the very best. And I can't wait to see what you do next with your life and with your teams and with your family. So thank you, David, for joining us this morning on You Go First. And congratulations on where you got yourself so far.
Thanks, Lain.
You bet. I want to thank again Coach David Kniffin for joining us on You Go First today. If you'd like to leave a comment for David, you can do that on the yougofirst.live. Or if you'd like to follow David and the Anteaters Volleyball Quest for a National Championship, you can follow their Instagram at UCI MVB, Men's Volleyball. So UCI Men's Volleyball. If you're finding this on the Odyssey Team's Facebook and you'd like to make a comment, please put that below and we'll get that to David or we'll get right back to you. Thanks and make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to another episode of You Go First. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to listen to another episode, you can find us at yougofirst.live, or you can see more about our host, Lain Hensley, on his Instagram at OneDreamChaser. To learn more about his company, Odyssey Teams Inc., go to odysseyteams.com or follow all their social media channels at Odyssey Teams. Thanks again, and we hope that you will go first to share our podcast with a friend or colleague. Now, you go first.
Don't forget to like us on the button below. Follow us by clicking the bell. You'll get all future episodes, as well as you can certainly find the podcast on the audio version everywhere where podcasts are found. So we're looking forward to the next episode. Got a lot of really exciting guests coming up. Thanks for watching.